Welcome everyone. It's just gone 1 o'clock, so we will get started. I'm going to start us off with Council's karakia, and I encourage you all to join in. It should be coming up on the screen. Hopefully you can read that, it's a little small, but we'll start off. Tuia te ranga, tuia te roro, tuia te roto, tuia te wahu, tuia ngā kamahi o te makmea o te roa, ki ranga, kia mau, kia atu, hami e, hui e, tai, ki e. Sorry, I didn't lead that very well. I lost my place there. Yeah, I'll keep practicing. Okay, look, we've got until 4 o'clock today. The areas of focus, I think, for the meeting need to be, apart from our standard recurring reports, we've got the year-end documentation, including Audit New Zealand's documents, as well as the year-end accounting issues. We've got the insurance update, and I'd like to leave plenty of time for the PX session at the end. So just starting off with our apologies, we've got apologies from Mayor Southgate, Councillor Hamilton, Councillor Nidu, Ralph, and no, that's it. So we do have a quorum. The agenda, I'll move that. Can I, second, thank you, Bruce. All in favour? Against, carried. Right, I'll get my mojo. Right, so the next is the confirmation of the agenda. Are there any matters of minor nature to add? No? I'll move that we confirm the agenda. Can I have a seconder? Thank you. All of those in favour? Against, carried. Are there any declarations of interest? No? And no members of the public wishing to speak. So that leads us to item 5, which is confirmation of the Strategic Risk and Assurance Committee minutes of the meeting on the 29th of March 23. Are there any items of accuracy? No? Okay. I'll move that they are, sorry, I've just got to find my place in the agenda, that the committee confirm that the open minutes of the committee meeting on the 29th of March are true and correct. Can I have a seconder? Thank you. Thank you, Bruce. All of those in favour? Against, carried. But that takes us now to item 6. Actually, sorry, just before we get to item 6, page 14 of the pack. I'm not sure what the relevance of that page is.
That was an appendix to the last minutes.
Oh, is it? Oh, okay. Right, we're on now page 15 of the pack. Chief Executive Report. Welcome, Lance.
Thanks, Chair Karen. Look, I'm not going to labour this report. I think it's pretty self-explanatory. Just health and safety. I'm not going to steal Dan's thunder. He'll talk about the health and safety report on the next item. Just a quick one. We're actually getting some waves of COVID going around our facilities again. I think we're not alone in that. So just to be aware of that and other illnesses too. So, look, I think we're well versed in how to manage those risks with our facilities and that sort of thing. So, but just keeping an eye on that. Crime and safety. Been quite a few discussions within council around not only generally, obviously Mayor Paula's, works closely with our local police commander, but also the safety of staff and elected members. We had a bit of a discussion on that recently, and I think Kelvin Powell's provided some advice, and will be providing some further advice for elected members about just being aware of potential risks and how to keep all of us safe, and some of the measures, physical measures we're taking in ensuring that we don't get people arriving on the 9th floor and other parts of council as well. So I think those are well in hand. Obviously, there was a couple more action items that came out of our discussions the other week around that, which we'll report back on in the future. And you'll see in there also that we, through the annual plan and Better Off funding, have got some additional city safety staff too, which from the public side of things should help with some of the rise in untoward behaviour at Waterworld, Hamilton Gardens and the Zoo Precinct and other places too, and also importantly the CBD. Weather events, we've been a bit lucky that we haven't been hit as severely as other parts of New Zealand, but I think there's some learnings from the report that came out, Mr Bush's report from Auckland, which Eva Lisa and the team have been having a good look at, and also from a civil defence and emergency management point of view. Then the economic outlook, I think elected members are well aware, and there'll be a discussion at the Finance Committee tomorrow just about really interest rates, which have had an effect on our finances during this financial year, and probably the prospect of a small recession going forward will be covered tomorrow. And that sort of goes into the growth and development cycle too, what's going to happen around the city and that sort of thing. The last thing is elected members are probably aware, especially with the headline in the paper this morning around uncertainty, going through some structural changes in the organisation, and I'll continue to keep elected members abreast of that and just assure you that we have a whole lot of support in place as we work through that process, and good communications too is important. So I'll leave it there and happy to answer any questions.
Are there any questions? Not showing any there, so I'll go straight to the recommendation that the committee receives the report and recommends that council receives the report. Can I have a seconder? Thank you, Councillor Ewan. All of those in favour? Against? Carried. Right, thank you, Lance. Right, the next item is Safety and Wellbeing Report on page 18. Welcome. As usual, you can take your report as read and give us the salient points, please.
Thank you, Chair Kieran. Report is read. Continue to focus on key programs and initiatives, have made good progress over this last quarter, drawing attention to the state of safety, which is near complete, bar one outstanding action which has a plan around, and then just other programs of work which focus on our safety management system, contractor management, critical risks, staff engagement through our safety committees, and so we continue to make good progress. So I'll pause there, and we're happy to take any questions.
Are there any questions? No questions on that report? I've got a couple. Firstly, I would say congratulations on the progress that's being made with those action points. It was also, excuse me, really good to see the Safety Governance Committee's review of the bandsaw incident, so it's good to see that being drilled down further. And I note from the Safety Governance Committee, I think it was their minutes, that there was a suggestion that the chair report through to this committee. Was that taken as an action point? Is that going to happen in the future?
Yeah, look, that is our plan. We would look to bring the chair from that Safety Governance Committee to this committee. The frequency, either annual or biannual, we just need to determine, but that is the plan.
Yeah.
Yep.
So when would we expect the first presentation then?
Happy to be guided by this committee.
I think it's a while since we've heard from the committee, so I'd welcome, maybe in September.
Brilliant.
Great. Bruce, you've got a question.
Thank you, Karen. Thank you, folk, for a good report again, as always. Hopefully one or two other councils may have made contact with you too, because I've suggested they might come and have a look at your reporting, so they're a bit overwhelmed by what you guys do. Hey, just looking, a couple of questions please. Firstly, looking at just the critical steps, so I'm on page 19 of the agenda. Just the critical risk thing, the comment is a bit dated. And given critical risks is clearly a key area that we would be wanting to identify our tactical actions around health and safety on, is there any update on post 15th March?
My apologies there, I've overlooked that and should have updated it. There certainly has been. So as a result of those workshops, the project teams now have started the verification process with my business partners. So we've actually built a critical template in our Aura system. So Aura is really starting to come to the party in terms of being the one source of the truth, I guess, for health and safety capture. So the business partners and the project teams have until the 30th of June to be out in the business, actually going to a number of sites where those critical risks are actually happening, and they're verifying the bow ties that we have in place, or the controls we think we have in place on both sides of the event, either pre-event or post-event. So we're about to get the results of that within the next few weeks.
Must be, within 2 weeks.
Yes, and then next step is to accumulate all that information, update the bow ties, and then take that out to the business.
Great, oh good. I mean, I'd be keen to see. I mean, obviously next meeting we'll see.
Definitely.
That sounds like a bit hard, but I think that's good because it's good to do. Look, Marie, the other issue was just looking, just query on page 20, looking at the triangle. It's always good. And thank you for trying to give us a sense of lead and lag. And so looking at the lead, it's interesting. You're right. I guess first aid injuries are sort of one stage away from a near miss. They are hit, aren't they? But they're not so serious, I presume. So that's useful. But that, of course, the first aid and the near hits make up a fair bit of the reporting. I appreciate you've also given a sense about whether near hit is being reported adequately or not. Any learnings from those? Be lead indicators, anything that we should be taking into account going forward?
Certainly near miss reporting provides us a good opportunity to intervene and make remedial actions before an actual event sort of takes place that actually causes injury or property damage. What we do is we do sort of assess the risk around near hits, and certainly if we have near hits or misses that have a high risk profile involving our critical risk or could have eventuated into something more severe, then those things are taken seriously, as they all are, and learning shared. So we're looking to improve, making sure that we do share those learnings across groups, particularly where you have like for like, or the risk profile can be shared with other groups with similar issues. So absolutely. Look, what we would always like to see is our near hit reporting higher, because it is a good indication of how our overall safety system is working. We did see a lift when we introduced Aura. It's a good system in terms of usability and a much easier system than we had. Traditionally, you do see a tail off. I think we're seeing that tail off now, but just continued promotion and working closely with groups to ensure that they do continue to report.
I think you once put an urban myth in my head, Dan, as to what the ratio of near hit reporting should be. Did you have a ratio in your head?
But we have seen much higher ratios than what we're seeing now in our triangle.
You don't want to give me the extra, it doesn't matter, okay. Sorry, just go back to my original question though. Look, I appreciate the process and the system, which you've explained well. Really what I'm trying to say is, have any of these near hits changed our view or added to our view about the risks that we face actually here at Hamilton City?
Yeah, the whole idea is us looking at the data and those events. What we have done within the last 3 months as a result of looking at the data and the investigations, and we're really wanting to be proactive, right? So we have introduced a manual handling program for a number of our frontline workers that across a number of the business that are doing that, so that they can actually work effectively without either having these near hits or any pain and discomfort. So we are now starting to see a turn in what the data and what the event reporting
Right,
is
so it's one of the
providing us.
learnings out of the near. You can
Definitely.
see what I'm trying to get to. I'm trying to
Yep.
say, what have you learned out of it?
Yeah.
Yeah, okay,
Yeah.
brilliant. Thank you. Thanks, Kieran.
Okay. No other questions? No? Great. Actually, I just had one other query on the report, and that's at page 30, the mention of the the night road work risk. Could you just give us a little more context around that risk?
What one was that on? Was that on?
Page 30, I think it was discussed at the Safety Governance Committee.
Oh, so that was a member of the public hit a contractor's vehicle. I'm not quite sure whether it was a drunken driver, but the vehicle actually did what it was meant to do. It has protection on the back of it. The driver has hit. So it was a public event, but with contractors of ours associated with that. So the contractor had everything in place to prevent not an accident happening, but certainly saving and keeping their people safe.
Okay, thank you. Right, the recommendation is that the committee receives the report and recommends that council receives the report. I'll move it. Can I have a seconder? Thank you, Councillor Ewan. All of those in favour? Against? Carried. Right, we'll move now to item 8, the risk. Thank you very much. The risk management report at page 33. There you go. Welcome, and a special welcome to Nick.
Thanks, Chair.
This is your first SHRAC meeting. is
First
it?
time presenting,
Yes,
yes.
presenting, yes.
Yeah, I'll take the report as read. However, I would like to highlight a couple of key points. There have been no significant changes since the last report presented in March. However, I would like to highlight strategic risks 2, 5 and 7. These 3 risks are most impacted by the current economic and financial climate, and in response to this, we are currently implementing several of our corrective controls associated with these risks, such as the ability to reprioritise and reduce CapEx and OpEx. I can confirm that the risk owners or responsible managers are here in person or online to take any questions.
Thank you. Are there any questions from the committee? Bruce?
I've got a couple, Nick, well done. Great to have you guys here. Look, really just a couple of clarification questions, if that's okay. And could I just look at page 34? So I'm looking at the strategic risk number 1 and paragraph 15. I just wondered if you could explain to me a bit more about the CDEM contract, what's been negotiated, and when I read the second sentence, it almost looks like over about where we're accommodated. Really what I'm to know is, again, I mean, Lance has already talked about learning from Auckland. I just wanted to know, is this just a detailed thing about where we're situated, or is it something more fundamental about civil defence and emergency management?
Yeah, I'll leave it to Calvin to answer.
I thought you might pass that one over.
Thank you for the opportunity. I will try.
Opportunity, good on you. Yeah, go for it, man.
I will try and grip that one up. Hamilton, 6 years, 9 months ago, Hamilton entered into a service level contract with the Waikato Regional Council whereby they deliver our civil defence services under a contract arrangement to us. That contract is now coming to a close. We've started negotiations to do that. The Waikato Regional Council are having their own negotiation with the building owners, which needs to complete before we can complete our negotiation. So in the interim, we have got an agreement to carry on delivering in the same means and manner as we have been for the last 6 years, until we get finalisation of what the future contract might look like, so we can then have a better set of conversations around that.
Look, that's fine, Calvin. I would have thought if a contract for service was somewhat apolitical or neutral about the location. I was struggling to understand why the critical pathway was to negotiate a lease on a building and then deal with actually what is more fundamental. Do we have a civil defence and emergency management service or not? I'm comfortable. I know you've rolled it over, so that's absolutely fine. But while you're here, it might be that you can help me with strategic risk number 8, which is on page 37. And I just wanted to again just understand a wee bit about the organisational business impact analysis and where that's leading us to. Could I understand it? There might not be you, Calvin,
I'd like
but I
to push
suspect
that one back to Nick.
somebody here must be able to help me here. Oh, sorry, Calvin, I assumed, yeah. Nick?
Yeah, I can speak to that. The organisational business impact analysis was run at the end of last year, which looked at all of Council's operations and then ranked them into a kind of tiered process to say, in a major disruption, who needs to come back online first and who's the most critical. And that will then inform how we do kind of organisational level crisis, emergency and incident management planning and response.
Cool.
I've got a related question. I see on page 56, which details out the treatment plans for strategic risk 8, the failure to respond to a crisis or emergency. And a number of those treatment plans are delayed or deferred. Can you just give me a little more context around that?
Yep, so there's probably two main reasons that a lot of those treatment plans have been delayed. The first is kind of capacity within the risk management team. So we've had some major changes to the team in the last 2 months, which means that we're a little bit lighter than we were. So that's part of the reason. And then the other is the capacity in the business. So at the moment, everyone is extremely busy is kind of the key term. And so we've just pushed out a lot of our timeframes to kind of accommodate organisational capacity.
Okay, so what are the new anticipated timelines for completing those areas of work? You know, I note that, you know, those first two, they relate to security risk assessments, and that's, you know, a risk that was, you know, highlighted by Lance in his report, and so I would have expected it to have been, you know, have a higher priority. So I'm just wondering, what is the new timeline for that sort of work?
Yeah, I don't have the timeline for the first two security ones.
Excuse me. What I'm working on with Nick is looking at the priority of work. So we've identified the business continuity and the security work as the highest priority, but
So
I don't
still,
have
right.
I don't have exact timelines at the moment, I'm afraid.
Okay.
If I can help, what we did do is we broke it down into pragmatic operational security related topics that ELT talked about, and we have on the ground reviewed our processes and made sure that we're on top of our security topics. The work that we're talking here is will complete that, but that won't be probably completed before the end of the year.
Okay, but what I'm taking from that is that work is a high priority.
Correct.
Yeah.
Great. Okay, are there any other questions from the committee on that report? No? Well, thank you very much for your time. So sorry, there was somebody?
No, sorry, I thought I was turned on. I just turned myself off.
Ah, okay. Right, the recommendation is that the committee receive the report. I'll move that. Can I have a seconder, please? Thank you, Councillor Maxine. All of those in favour? Against? Carried. Right, and next item is item number 9 at page 65, and that's PwC's report on the internal audit update. Welcome, Aaron and Stuart. Right.
take the report as read. Obviously, we've also got the organisational improvement register report attached.
Okay, great, that's short and sharp. Are there any questions for Aaron or Stephen? Sorry, I just called you Stuart. Any questions from the committee? No? Okay, so I see that the legal compliance audit's delayed until next, sorry, did I miss something there? No? No. Legal compliance audit delayed until June, resource consent's not going ahead, and the delegation's replaced with 3 waters due in June. Can you just remind me why the resource consents is not going ahead at all, rather than deferred?
You have to ask management that. 'Cause
I'm sorry, I don't know the answer to that either.
Right, okay, maybe I'll raise that one next meeting.
We can look into that and come back to you via email.
Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you. And also, I was, from my notes from last meeting, I was expecting to see the Waka Kotahi audit. Does anybody know what's happening with that?
Chris? No? Anything about a Waka Kotahi audit?
Sorry, it's in Eva Lisa's wheelhouse. I'll have to find out
Okay.
for you on that, but I'll
Maybe-
make an inquiry as we're sitting here.
Maybe in the same email.
Yep.
Okay, right, so we have, I think it's actually under under this report rather than as a separate report, we have got the tax risk framework. Aaron, did you want to take us through that, or who was to be fronting that one?
Those 2 reports, the GST FBT and the Tax Governance Framework report, were probably added to the agenda in ERA. They are a piece of internal work that we're working on in terms of reviewing our protocols and frameworks. So it wasn't part of the structured internal audit report itself. So with your leave, we'd like to set those aside, and we'll probably come back at a later meeting after our piece of work has been done.
Yeah, I think we need to do a little bit of work offline, and also just determine whether it's this committee is the right committee for that to come to, and possibly look at the terms of reference of this committee if it is deemed the correct committee. And are you suggesting that the GST FBT compliance evaluation be
Yes,
handled in
the same
way?
Same.
Okay. Right, are the committee...
Chair Kieran, I have some information on the... Have some information on the Waka Kotahi technical audit starts on the 27th of June, so it hasn't started yet.
Okay. Thank you for that. Okay, so are the rest of the committee happy that we set aside the the tax risk framework and the GST FBT compliance evaluation for a future meeting once a bit of work's been done offline? Yeah, thank you. And so that now takes us to the PwC follow-up of the internal audit recommendations. Did you want to just give us a quick summary of that, Aaron?
Yep. Thanks, Chair. Look, you know, it was pretty pleasing to see that 38 of the 67 recommendations were confirmed as being implemented, and the vast majority of those remaining open are from more recent engagements. Open up for questions.
Are there any questions? Yes, Bruce.
Timing, because it was, just remind, look, I'm sorry I've asked this, but Ibis Breeze is our financial modelling, right?
Yes.
And we seem to be in an uncontrolled situation in the sense of our software provider is the challenge to getting the recommendations done. And I think we can all talk about software providers. Critical thing for me is that as we have just done an annual plan, or just about, I don't know when you adopt it, sorry David, you've got the LTP coming up. Clearly this is presumably pivotal to that. What assurance can we have that either those recommendations aren't the end of the world, or that we'll get them fixed and we'll have a sound system for our LTP?
We have a recent from Breeze, didn't we? They've changed their, they've advised us that they're going to be working on this shortly.
Yeah, on the one outstanding recommendation, that's we've got some internal controls in place for the meantime. You'll see the update in the re-audit of the Organisation Improvement Register. So we've got some mitigating controls in place to do that. But there is, we had an update with them not very long ago, looking at some of the things that they're doing, and really, I guess their technical focus at the moment is to ensure that there's capacity in the system to deal with the waters inclusion, exclusion thing for the LTP. So there's a lot of focus in that area currently.
Thank you. So back to my high level question, you're comfortable then Breeze will serve our needs when it comes to the LTP and our financial modelling?
Yes.
Aaron, the report didn't cover one, your review didn't cover one report. Can you remind me what that report was and why that wasn't included?
It was the growth modelling report, and that was just due to staff availability.
Okay. And one of the recommendations was that the cyber, with regards to the cyber recommendations, that the 3-year roadmap be reassessed for maturity throughout the project. Can anybody tell me when the next maturity assessment is planned for, or do I need to park that one till PX?
Our CIO, Alan Lightbington.
Great.
Yes, through the chair, we've actually completed that assessment, and when we're in PX, I can share that with you if you want to see it.
Great. Right, let's pick that up in PX, thank you. Right, if there aren't any more questions on that report, I'll go back to 65 for the recommendation. The recommendation is that the committee receives the internal audit update report. I'll move that. Can I have a seconder, please? Thank you, Bruce. All of those in favour, say aye. Against, carried. Thank you, Stephen and Aaron. Right, we're motoring. Item 10, Organisational Improvement Report at 1:32.
Stephen will talk to that as well.
Stephen, I'll hand over to you, noting that a lot of that is covered in the previous PwC review. Are there any items you'd like to highlight? It's at page
I think we,
132.
yeah, I've found that. We covered a lot of that already, I think, and I've got nothing further to add, so we'll take that
Okay.
report as read.
No further questions from the committee? No. Okay, the recommendation is that committee receives the report. I'll move that. Can I have a seconder, please? Thank you, Councillor Maxine. All of those in favour? Against, carried. Right, that takes us to item 11. I don't see Audit New Zealand in the room.
They're on their way.
Right.
I
I wonder whether, do you know how far away they are?
They could be 10 minutes away.
Okay, well let's, if the committee is agreeable, let's move to item 13. We got Julia.
Julia's here.
Great. So that is page 145. Welcome, Julia. Right.
Thank you. I've also got Matthew Wilson here as a continuation.
Okay, over to you.
Thank you. So this is just the general insurance activity update. So just a couple of high-level comments. The report summarises the challenges we have in the market at the moment, and also some of our own inflationary pressures with respect to our values. Our renewal approach is discussed, and it is just in line with what we've been doing in previous years. We are undertaking some loss modelling to help inform our renewal this year as well, which will come to this committee in December. And we also just continue to monitor what is happening in the market in terms of premium movements, noting that our premiums are affected by the market, but also some other external factors which are discussed in the document. So I'll take that as read and move to any questions.
Great, thank you. Are there any questions from the committee? No? A good report, and on the back of the presentation earlier today at the workshop, which was helpful. Thank you very much. That was a very quick presentation. Thank you. The recommendation is that the committee receives the report and notes the market commentary in the 23-24 insurance renewal, for the insurance renewal. I'll move that. Can I have a seconder, please? Yep. Thank you, Moko. All of those in favour? Aye. Against? Carried. Right, we'll go to the compliance report. And Mish is going to present that at page 150.
Good afternoon. The main matter that we're seeking feedback from the committee today on is the draft of the reviewed fraud and corruption policy, which is attached to the report along with the previous, with the current policy as well. I would note that we have had some, we have a notifiable privacy breach and some matters to do with fraud that we can update the committee on in PX as well. So I won't go into any of those in detail right at this moment, but if there's any comments or feedback on the policy or anything else in the update of policies in general, I'm happy to take questions.
Okay. Are there any questions from the committee? We're a quiet bunch today. Was that a question from you, Bruce? No.
Sorry, Mish, I was just going to say, perhaps you just take us through your process for actually reviewing the policy of fraud and corruption, and have you consulted our auditors?
Sure. The first thing I did was have a look at the review that we did of the protected disclosures policy recently, to try and pick up, I guess, the consistency and theme around people in this organisation being able to speak up and knowing who and how they can do that, alongside what's expected of staff and their behaviour. We have gone through an exercise with some key stakeholders in HR, our business support leadership team, and also a review and feedback from Lance. I haven't talked to the auditors about this one. It's really been an internal review and having a look at the OAG guidance on what we should expect and should contain in a policy.
That's fine. I wasn't trying to catch you out in any sense, Mish. I think it wouldn't be a bad idea. I mean, the fraud bribery with the OAG is now, and there's I quite like the idea of the suite of integrity framework, and that's good. So that would be worth it if it comes to that case. But otherwise, I'm happy. Thank you.
Yeah, I'd agree that it's probably a good idea. I would just say that, I don't have any particular feedback on that policy. I thought it was good, particularly with that, that focus on the speak up aspects of it. I do note that the risk management policy is due for review in June, our next meeting being September, will that be, are you anticipating that will be coming to the next committee meeting?
Yes.
And right, that's now been answered. That's good. Okay, if there aren't any further questions, I'll move to the recommendation, which is that the committee receives the report and receives the updated fraud and corruption management policy. Can I just confirm that's a management policy rather than a governance policy, so we're not recommending that through? Okay, so it's as the recommendation stands. I'll move that. Can I have a seconder, please? Yep. Thank you, Councillor Muckle. All of those in favour? Against? Carried. Right, I did see Leon, but he's disappeared again with Steve. Oh, sorry. Not great with my names today. Yeah. Another auditor that I deal with. If somebody could find them, that. Thank you. And so we're going to flick back to.
He'll be doing the accounting one as well, Stephen.
Yes, yeah.
Oh, he's
Yeah. Welcome, Clarence. So we're now back to page 138, and Stephen's here now too. Great. Okay, so first of all, we will take the audit plan. So I want to spend a bit of time going through these, given that these papers were late, and just to make sure that the committee fully understand the papers. And I would just highlight, I guess, my disappointment that these papers were late, given that we deferred our meeting to accommodate Audit New Zealand's timeframes on those. But we have them in the pack now. The fee proposal letter just went in yesterday, so we will go through that in a little more detail. So first of all, perhaps if we go through perhaps the engagement letter, then the annual plan, and then the fee proposal. Does that make sense? Yep.
I was going to suggest, Madam Chair, if we do the annual plan, because that just covers the immediate, and then the next two are related to the engagement.
Okay.
Is that, yep.
Do you want to introduce it? Or?
No, you're the expert. You wrote it.
Thank you, Madam Chair and Council members or committee members. So the audit plan, maybe I should start off with just responding on the lateness of it. I think we made the date for the meeting, not necessarily the date cut off for the agenda, so I apologise for that. There is a bit of an improvement on the previous year, and we will strive to improve even further. So please accept my apology on that.
So just for future reference, obviously the committee need time to read the papers, so we need those papers before at least a week out to give staff time to compile the papers and have them ready for the committee to read.
Appreciate that. So with my audit plan, the purpose of the audit plan is to pretty much highlight the risk areas that we've identified in our internal planning meetings, as well as discussions with management. Although it's issued as a final, if the committee feels that there's any specific risk that we haven't covered and you would like to be reported back on, then I can add it to the audit plan. Now again, all the numbers that's in this plan is based on last year's figures, so it's for planning purposes. This is not the final, so if I say materiality, that may change. Most probably it will change. And the same with, we have some non-financial reporting measures that we've included in the plan. That also will be reassessed when we actually arrive on site. And that's also part of our unpredictability in our audit procedures. Say, yes, we are planning to look at these. Maybe that we, through whatever happening in the sector, may select something else. Where that happens, we will definitely work with management and this committee to highlight why it was selected and the reasoning behind it all. You'll also see in the audit plan with the non-financial measures, it's quite an increase on the previous year. So we are working with our technical team to see if we can reduce the number of measures that we actually test. Having said that, the highlights of this year's audit will be again on the revaluation movements. That is so subjective and full of judgment. That, and then also the fair value assessments. Again, it's the judgment, and then that leads into your revalue, depreciation and other movements, and it can be significant. Therefore, that's selected as a high risk and an audit focus. Other one is your management override, which is pretty much part of all our audits. That is just looking at the controls and who signs off, that sort of thing. So that was a question.
On Zoom. Right.
The other one that leads into the revaluations is just the revaluation of your investment property. Now, investments in investment properties gets revalued every year, where with your PP&E, that normally gets revalued with enough intervals to make sure that it's carried at fair value. Your accounting policy dictates that. It's normally 3 to 5 years. But we've seen, especially with the COVID, it was quite necessary to have it revalued every year. Again, we don't know what to expect. We'll see, I think in the through water space, there may be significant movements, but we'll first have to see what the fair value assessment brings up. The other one that's also part of that is the asset impairment testing. There we look at your pretty much assets that's been revalued, that's carried at fair value, but maybe it doesn't have the full service potential that was intended, and then you have to impair those assets. So nothing wrong with the asset, but it just can't deliver the way it was originally designed for. We look at that as well as your work in progress. Work in progress where you start a project and maybe you stop, and then there's some changes, and some of that cost needs to be written off. So we look at the impairment of that. Then the three waters, or as it's called now, the affordable waters reform. Basically what we're saying is we don't know what's going to happen, and we'll work with management as and when it happens. This year there's 2 new accounting standards that's being introduced. It's the PE IPSAS 41, which is financial instruments. So that is just the recognition and measurement of your financial assets. So it's just how it's disclosed, and you're looking at your impairments and credit losses in a different way, and a lot more disclosure that goes into that. And then also with PBE FRS 48, which is a new standard on your non-financial reporting. There's a few new requirements under that standard. We don't expect a lot of changes because local government in general is really good with how they report their non-financial performance measures. So we don't expect any big changes. We'll be working with management. We will be giving them a checklist to make sure that they comply with the new standard, which makes it easier when we come along to make sure that it complies with the new standard. Drinking water quality performance measure. Again, last year that was quite a big thing where you had to get independent contractors to come and verify the results. This year it's even more difficult to report because there's no clear standards against what you have to report. There was a change from the drinking water quality, there used to be the drinking water quality standard, and it's now the drinking water quality assurance rules that you have to report against. So we will have to work with management to see exactly what that looks like and how that information has been gathered and how it's reported. So that's something that we will work through with management. Next thing on my audit plan is pretty much just the fraud risk and how we look at it. Under the new auditing standard 315, is how we assess risk. There's quite a big focus on the IT environment and how that feeds into the fraud risk. So that's also part of our discussion and working with management on that fraud questionnaire, or not questionnaire, but the impact of fraud, potential fraud on the environment. Next part is on the group audit. So we have the Waikato Innovation Growth Limited Group. We've assessed that as non-significant, which means that we will do analytical reviews over that. We won't be too bothered about the outcome of that. We don't expect that to have a big impact on the group financial accounts. So it's just the value of the transactions is below our expected materiality. Once again, we will reassess that when we get the final accounts in, but that's our initial assessment. Waikato Regional Airport Limited, there we have assessed it as a significant component for specific balances, and that is the revaluation or the investment property and the PP&E. The revaluation of those, I think in the prior year, we found that with the revaluation that occurred in the airport, where the audit was deferred, it led to a prior period error in council's accounts. So that's why we have instructed the group auditor to give us assurances over those movements. That's investment property as well as PP&E, and that affects your carrying value of your investment in the airport. And then Hamilton City itself, we'll be doing a full audit. New auditing standards, I said, is the 315, which is the identifying and assessing the risk of material misstatement, and that's in the IT environment. So we'll be working a bit closer with the IT auditors as well as with the IT department of council, and that's already started. We're talking about enhancing year-end procedures, and that is working with management, making sure that what we're trying to do is to bring some of the work forward, things like the high-risk areas, judgments, where that's applied, so revaluations, fair value assessments, trying to do that a bit earlier so that we don't run into the issues later on. Again, we can only do that if that's available for audit in the earlier, and we will be discussing that with management. Materiality, as I said, just to highlight, this is based on, for planning, and it's based on last year's figures. So that may change. Hopefully it will increase based on the revaluations and fair value assessments, mostly the revaluations. We have two specific materialities. One is our fixed asset materiality, which is applied to all the revaluation movements. And then we have specific materiality, which is pretty much for all the other transactions. That's why we split it out between, or how we set our materiality as well. Our fixed asset materiality is set on revalued assets, so that's PP&E, where previously we could have used total assets. So that's a change, but that came into about 2 or 3 years ago, where we changed that approach, and it makes sense for the movements going through other revaluation reserves. Then we have a clearly trivial threshold, under which if there's an error less than that, we will not even report that. We will keep track of it. If you want to change it, we keep track of it, but we won't report it. If there's any changes more than the clearly trivial, less than materiality, where management feel they don't want to make those changes, we will report that on our letter of representation, and they can sign off on it. Once it reaches materiality, or more than materiality, then obviously there may be an impact on the audit opinion, because then we feel it's not a reflection or a fair reflection of the financial position. So that's when we will encourage management to make those changes. But again, once we get to that point, we can have those discussions to see what's acceptable and where we need to make some changes. For the non-financial reporting, you'll see we've set specific materiality for each measure. Some of the measures we can't set a materiality because it's either implementing a plan, so it's yes or no. You can't say 8% or 5% materiality. The 5% or the 8% materiality that we do set is based on the reported result, and it's normally 5% where we deem it to be of high public interest. Again, as I said, we are trying to reduce the number. There's a few things that we are working through to where we think that the results reported may be not a duplication, but pretty much measuring the same thing, like satisfaction and response times. There may be a correlation between that, so we're working to see if we can reduce that. Again, we'll be talking to management if there's any changes in that. hopefully we won't add any, but as if there's an issue during the audit, say sector-wise, sometimes we do get instructions to specifically look at new things. Where that happens, we will be discussing it with management and this committee just to explain the reasoning behind that. And then the last page is about professional judgment and skepticism, where we can't just take something at face value. Sometimes not sometimes, we have to be able to verify what's been told to us. I suppose the interesting part will be the time frame. So we have before that, just the people that's involved in the audit will be myself, and then I have 2 separate engagement quality review directors this year, one for planning, while our normal EQR is away on leave. Just to progress the audit, we decided to appoint a separate one for the interim. So it's making sure that the planning and the interim is being reviewed by a second director as well. And then for the final, it will be the usual EQR again. Nadir will be the audit manager. Unfortunately, he couldn't be here today. He's in Auckland attending some other meetings, trying to get some audits done, some arrear audits, so a bit of pressure. And then we've got a very experienced in charge this year, or assistant manager, which will be leading the team. And then we have our same computer auditor, or ISA auditor. The timeframes, we've had our first interim audit. Our second interim audit will start on the 10th of July. We'll be talking to David and Tracy and the team and see if we can bring work forward. If that is the case, we will try and do some of the fair value assessments and revaluations earlier as well, so that we can, because we had the discussion around the days of verbal clearance and where the final opinion is being adopted or presented, where there may not be the 7-day notice, which is not ideal for the committee. So what we're trying to do is to give ourselves enough time to do that. I can't guarantee it, but that's something that we're definitely pushing for, see if we can do it. Again, that will have to be done in conjunction with what management can supply and provide us, so that we can actually perform that audit earlier. But the plan is to have it signed off before 31 October. There's no extension this year, so that's why there's a condensed pressured time frame. I think we've got about 5 or 6 weeks for the final audit, where we previously did take a bit longer. But to say, the plan is to get it signed off with enough time to have the discussions, maybe not the 7 days, but we'll push for that.
Madam Chair, from a staff point of view, we've reviewed this document. The timetable works for us and our subsidiaries. We have confirmed that. And so our annual report, we've had the first interim audit, as Clarence said, and we're and end of year is next week. So it's all go.
So just before I open it up to questions, can I just clarify, when you say the dates work for the team,
Yes.
how are you going to get the annual report reviewed by SHRAC and approved by council? Current dates, meeting dates don't line up with the proposed verbal clearance of 23rd of October?
So we've done some work on that. And are you going to help?
I can potentially help. This has been work happening in the background, and governance is to put additional meetings into calendars that would accommodate the verbal clearance date and the council date.
Okay, so I think we just need to be clear as a committee that if verbal clearance is not given until 23rd of October, that is going to squeeze the amount of review time for the committee and for council, because we've only got 7 days before the statutory deadline. So the verbal clearance on the 23rd is really not ideal. I hope that you are able to bring that forward obviously provided that the information is provided to you on time, but we've never had issues with that in recent history at least. So I don't anticipate there'll be any hold up. I'm sure Stephen will have the team ready and rearing to go.
Yep.
Can I just open it up for questions now, Bruce?
Thank you, Kieran. Great to see you, Clarence. I always call this letter the honeymoon letter. It's full of promises and we both want to deliver. So I'm always very keen to get a sense that the plans really are there. Look, you asked, are there any other areas of risk? And I can't think of any, and I'd like to suggest, Kieran, we don't find any more. I think it's fair to say that the critical question here is we still aren't doing particularly the audit clearance of the annual report under normal circumstances. Because we've all agreed we're dealing with this letter miles too late. And I think only normality can come once we've got to the 31st of October with an adopted annual report, then we can hopefully have a normal year. That's certainly what I'd hope, Clarence. I suspect that's what you do too. So look, I don't think, sorry, to your question, are there any other areas of risk? My view, no. Let's get on and have an efficient audit. Stephen, I do want to ask a question because this is my one time I can ask it really of management.
Yeah.
And you've had a chance to probably in your interim role to have a look at what's happening internally. You appear to sound, and I guess I'm asking you to confirm that you're confident that our systems, our processes, our resourcing is going to enable us to deliver. I mean, you've said these timelines are right, but I guess I'm going one step back. Our systems and processes, you're confident we'll get there?
Yeah, so I haven't worked with the team for 6 years this closely, and for the last 3 or 4 weeks, I have been working very closely with them on annual plan and this and the LTP. They are a highly skilled group of people that I am enjoying working with, and I have a lot of confidence that we have the systems and processes in place to deliver this.
That's a good basis. And Clarence, you're comfortable you've got the resources in place. Now, clearly there's obviously challenges here in terms of dealing with issues, but at this stage, level of communication and your resourcing gives rise we can deliver on this. What's your tolerance in terms of days, weeks, if something has to go back?
Through you, Madam Chair. So it's quite a loaded question.
Of course it is.
And
it's a tough one, I hope, in some sense, Clarence.
No, it's very tough in all senses. And you've got the right to ask that question. At the moment, I can tell you that we have resourced or employed a lot of new people. We have a really experienced assistant manager, as I said in my introduction, of the team that were leading the audit. I know a lot of the staff on your side, really capable ex-auditors. So I know that they are very capable. Every time I see them, I have tears in my eye. So I know that your side can deliver. We have resourced, and previously we said we have it on a timetable, and we have a few potential people that may come from somewhere, where this time we actually have names. We have a full team to come in. Yes, and we had the discussion around the 7 days, and I would really like to do that. My promise at the moment is trying to meet the statutory deadline. After that comes all the internal meetings. If I can bring enough work forward, then it gives us 2 or 3 weeks at the end of the audit where we can potentially sign off before the agreed date, where it just takes the pressure off everybody, where there's enough time to have the discussions, have the, go through the accounts in detail, have the robust discussions that's needed. So that is the aim. My promise is I'll do my utmost to deliver on it. And at the moment, yes, I'm confident that I have the people to do it, but there's always a but. It is still central government with their clearances at the end of September can throw a spanner in the works. And at the moment, there's no indication that any of my team members will be used on that. So I'm pretty confident that we can deliver.
The conditionality of that answer, so that's fine. Thank you. Appreciate that.
Councillor Ewan.
Yeah, thanks, Madam Chair. My question, putting aside timings and delays, is cost of your audit. And I'm mindful in the letter that we received a couple of days ago, you're suggesting a series of increases, and they are quite significant. Yeah.
I want to give that point full time. I wonder whether we might just finish off on the audit plan and the year end, and then we'll go to the fee, because I want to spend a decent amount of time on that, because I think it is a significant item that you
Your
raised.
chair, madam, I'll accept your ruling.
Thank you. So are there any other questions on the annual plan? Councillor Maxine.
Thank you, and thanks, Bruce, for your questioning on that. On a couple of items today, we've heard already about a stretched resource within council and the inability to perhaps meet some of the important work deadlines and or engage in assessments that are needed. I really want to hear from a CE and maybe General Manager about how we will be able to, as in the department, to be able to keep to these deadlines and really be able to get the information needed to meet the work that Clarence is going to need.
Sure. I'd love to respond. The conversations today around deadlines that we've missed have been quite deliberate, and they've been deliberate because of our focus on prioritising our tasks based on vacancies, workload, and budgets. So deliberate. In terms of this audit, we have, for recent years, always been at the ready and always been prepared for Audit New Zealand to come and start their work. And that will be no different this year. This is a top priority and key focus of the finance team and of council. So rest assured we'll be there waiting, and if we can get Audit New Zealand in earlier, we'll be welcoming that as well.
Thank you. Thanks for that.
If there aren't any other questions on the annual plan, I just have a couple. Firstly, can you just give us a general summary of how the first interim audit went? Were there any red flags, any issues?
So, thank you, Madam Chair. No, so the interim audit went well. We went through all the systems that we wanted to. After our second interim, the plan is to also issue a management report or a report to governors. Normally, if there's significant breakdowns, we will be communicating that immediately. At the moment, it's just there's nothing to report, so we'll wait for the second interim audit. So the audit went well, thank you.
Sorry, did you say there will be a management report on the interim?
That's the plan, yes.
Right. So when can we expect that?
So that will be after our second interim. I just want to see. 6th or the 10th of July will be our second, the 10th of July, and then draft interim report to council will be issued on the 31st of July. That's the plan. We can issue it once we get management comments. It's only fair to get management's comments as well.
Yep. Okay. And when you and I spoke prior to this meeting, you were waiting for some information or a determination, I guess, from your technical team around the auditing of output measures with regards to the greenhouse gas emissions. Have you had a decision on that?
So unfortunately not. It is still part of your outcome measures. I think, personally, it will become a bigger focus for the long-term plan and exactly where your greenhouse gas emissions measure will be sitting and how that's measured. But I personally think that will be more focus for the long-term plan than for the annual report this year. If it changes, again, I will definitely be highlighting that ASAP.
Okay. Thank you. So if there aren't any further questions on the audit plan, we'll now move to the year-end accounting issues, which pretty much cover the areas of focus for the audit plan. So I think it's a natural progression to go to that. Did you have a question, Stephen?
I agree.
Yeah. Okay, so I'll hand over to you just to highlight anything further in that year-end accounting issues paper. Sorry, that is at page around about 138. Let's have a look. That is page 140 in Diligent.
So Tracy has laid this out before she went away, and the matters are included in the executive summary. There's no change since this was drafted. Revaluation of parks has resulted in a $21 million gain. We are still in the process of processing that, but that's all good. And the transport revaluation first draft has just been dropped, and we're not expecting that to have an impact on this annual report. It will have an impact on next financial year. It's a 1 July revaluation, but we're still working on that. That's very early days for that one to assess that and whether that has an impact on the annual report or not. Other than that, no changes in accounting standards of any substance that will have an impact. Those that were listed by Clarence have a requirement for us to add some words, but won't make any difference to our financial statements.
Okay.
So that's that covers that, I hope.
Any questions on the year-end accounting issues? No, I would just note, I think it's worthwhile noting that the land and buildings not proposed to be revalued this year, and I think you're comfortable with that, Clarence?
In general, yes. We will again assess it based on our materiality, and if there's a new revaluation that's performed with indicative numbers, because they will have to perform a fair value assessment in any case, because at year end that's a requirement just to make sure that it's not. If it was revalued in the last 2 years and it's a significant movement with enough detailed inputs, you can book that without a full revaluation. So if we do get to a point where that's an option or necessity, then we can discuss it, but I don't foresee any problem with that.
And so that's where the transport question may come in terms of that fair value assessment.
Yeah, yeah. Okay, Bruce.
How long do you hold that fair value assessment open for? In other words, if we do this at 30 June, if there was, say, a significant movement in the capital goods or construction price index, say in September, do you reassess the value, the fair value assessment before you give your opinion?
So the short answer is no. It is the value as at 30 June, although the audit is after that. If there's a significant movement that should have been known at 30 June, then it will be an adjusting event. So if, let's say, there's an earthquake after June, it won't impact any of your carrying values, but it will definitely have disclosure, where if there's an event before 30 June, then that will have to be reflected. So we don't keep it open, although it takes a bit of time to get to the answer. It is as at 30 June. One of the reasons why the revaluations and fair value assessments take so much time and to audit and as well as to prepare is the significant amount of judgment around and your assumptions going into that assessment, because just unit rates, or if you use indexes, which index do you use? Because it's not something that you, comparable sales is quite easy, but as soon as you're using indexes, it's not a straightforward answer of just using that one and you'll get to the right answer. So you're aware it is a complicated process, and that's why, but it's at 30 June.
That's helpful. Thank you very much. Mr. Clarence, very clear.
Okay, if there aren't any further questions on the annual report accounting treatment review paper at page 140, I'll move the recommendation that the committee receives the report. Can I have a seconder? Thank you, Bruce. All of those in favour? Against? Carried. Right, so that leaves us the engagement letter. Can somebody just remind me what page the engagement letter is at? Sorry? 173, thank you. So Clarence, I'm assuming that this is a standard engagement letter for the years ended 30 June 23, 24 and 25. Is there anything in particular that you'd like to highlight in that letter?
Thank you, Madam Chair. No, this is our standard letter. That's just highlights our responsibilities as well as that of council and what's expected of both parties. But that's a standard letter, and if there's any questions on that, I'm happy to take that.
Are there any questions on the engagement letter? And then we'll come to the fee proposal.
Yes, I do have a question. I note on page 4 of the letter that Audit New Zealand do not examine every transaction, nor do they guarantee complete accuracy of the financial statements and performance information. Just wondering how we recognise and pick up on any of those shortfalls as part of this process. Are they captured anywhere, you know, so as not to put each other into the hot water? So how do we provide and capture those gaps or those shortfalls?
Thank you, through you, Madam Chair. So the whole purpose of audit is to give reasonable assurance, not absolute assurance. If you want absolute assurance, we can test every transaction, but I can promise you those numbers will change significantly. In our audit proposal, audit plan, I've highlighted the materiality. The materiality helps us to determine what level of errors we can accept. Now, there's also a standard, I just want to see which one it is, that can help the preparers of the account to set your own materiality as a preparer of financial statements. That is IFRS 3 practice statement 2. That is making materiality judgments from a preparer's point of view. So it's in the audit plan, and I will definitely recommend that you go and read that and see how that, because my materiality should be at a higher level than yours as the preparers of the financial statements, but you can rest assured that it's a reasonable presentation of your financial position at the end of the year.
Well, I guess so. This is the first time I've been through this process, so I'm just on the back of just looking at the increased costs that we're going to usurp in this process, that would expect a higher degree of assurances, that's all. But this is perhaps how it is in this space, and so I'm learning along the way. So thank you for that response. I'm not too sure it's what I want to hear or should hear, but it's what I've heard.
Yeah, so there's a very long list of technical standards that these guys professionally, whether it's Audit New Zealand or anyone else, have to follow, it is what it is, really.
But there's also, you know, the team that you're overseeing at the moment also have a number of internal controls to, you know, ensure the accuracy and hopefully deter fraud along the way.
I'm sure David's all over it.
Pardon?
I'm sure
I'm
David's
totally all over it. I check every transaction.
Right, so look, there isn't actually any recommendation in the pack with this letter, but can I propose that the committee recommend, so this engagement letter is to be signed by Mayor Paula I'm not sure that she's actually got the delegated authority to do that, and she will probably require the backing of at least this committee. So what I propose is that this committee recommend through to council that Mayor Paula Southcote sign the engagement letter on behalf of council. Is the committee happy with that recommendation?
Karen, if you're worried about process, I agree with you. The committee should be recommending that the letter be signed, and Mayor Paula should expect that before she does. So I'd happily second that.
We can add it to the recommendations.
Thank you. I'll put that to the vote. All in favour?
Sorry, Madam Chair. I still have some questions regarding the
I'm coming to the. This is just the engagement letter,
But
not the proposal letter, which is further in the pack. Well, we're definitely coming to the fees.
right, so
Or
the
would
engagement.
you prefer to leave this resolution until we
Procedural
talk
question of
about the fees?
clarification.
Yeah.
I'm simply asking, is there no financial obligations that stem from the engagement letter that you're asking us to vote on now?
Okay, good point. Okay, let's just hold this resolution until we discuss the fee letter, and then we can discuss whether we're happy to recommend this through.
Much more appropriate.
Yes, yeah. Right, okay. So please remind me to come back to that resolution. Right, now let's move to the fee proposal letter, which is at page, can somebody remind me what page that is? 211 of the pack. I'll hand over to you, Clarence, to take us through the main points of that letter, bearing in mind the time is ticking on.
Thank you, Madam Chair. So I think everybody read the fee proposal letter from the reactions that I've seen. I can start off by acknowledging the significant increase in the audit fees. I think 3 years ago it was where I promised huge increases is on the way. With COVID and that never really came through in our audit proposal letters. The fee was held as it was pretty much below par. Over the last 3 years, I think the impact of that became very clear in how we struggled with having enough auditors in the profession in general. So this was pretty much not a reaction to that, but something that was in the making for quite a long time. So overall, I think when you look at it, there's an increase of just over 270 hours, or on the dot 270 hours to perform this audit. There's a lot of additional work required on revaluations, fair value assessments, the new accounting and auditing standards that comes in. As some of the committee members may be well aware of, there's additional scrutiny on auditors. Every time something happens, there's a new standard that comes into play. But also just to deliver a high quality audit takes time. Now, in the proposal letter, I have highlighted the actual hours that it took in the last 2, 3, 4 years to perform the audit. We have acknowledged the inefficiencies that we have previously with the way that we did the audit. Things like our resourcing from different offices being squashed, taking people that maybe didn't have the right experience, which I can assure you is not included in the proposal. That is excluded from it. I just demonstrated in the plan our write-offs. Now, 80% of that most probably is self-inflicted. I never came back to council to seek any recoveries because you have a really good team delivering. Our base fees were wrong. And I can't penalise council for delivering good, but my base fee is wrong. This is trying to get to a position where we can deliver the audit. If you deliver well, we can deliver the audit without any major write-offs. And that's the purpose of resetting the fees and then trying to explain the reasons for it. But I acknowledge it is a significant increase, and yeah, that's why it took a bit longer than what we wanted. I knew that this was going to come up as a discussion, so the Office of the Auditor General had it all moderated, all city councils together, making sure that from a distance, it actually makes sense, irrespective of the service provider, if that makes sense. Thank you.
Okay. So to summarise, this is the fee proposal for the 3-year period, 2023 through to 2025. The fee in the first year is going up from 320,000 to 280,000, which is a 50% increase, and then a almost 8% increase for the years after that. Right, Councillor Ewan.
Yeah, just walk me through this again. You're saying that in the 22 actual fees charged, you got the hours wrong.
So it took us longer to do the audit than what we were paid for.
So did we ask you to do more work, or did you just get the hours wrong?
We got the hours wrong. And because it needs to go through, and it's a very valid point, if I may answer. So how we do, in 2022, there was a lot of inefficiencies, which and I showed the actual hours, excluding the inefficiencies. The inefficiencies is where we have 2 or 3 in charges instead of just 1. We don't have continuity. We have people without the right experience doing the audit. So we acknowledge that. That is part of our own cost that we absorb. When we have a real experienced team and we get all the information required, then we have a base fee to say this is the hours that we expect to do a quality audit without any hold-ups. That base hours, we're wrong.
And so you're now saying for 23, 24, 25, you're pretty confident you've got the number of hours that you feel will be required to do the work?
Yes.
And are you saying that those hours were more than the hours, that the areas that you are providing your watchful eye across, has that changed significantly from 22 to 23?
So, yes
There's
and
no
no.
new, okay.
Yeah. In 2020, we had a base fee, which was a bit off. Then COVID came. So with COVID, a lot of things changed in the market. So fair value assessments, revaluations, interest rates, all those things suddenly changed, which had an impact on the financial statements. There's a lot of judgments flowing into your financial statements. Any judgment needs a lot of additional auditing to demonstrate that. How do you audit your judgment? It is by comparing with other councils, comparing it with wider things, which takes more time. So, yes, I'm certain that in a normal year, we've got the hours right. In a year where there's an earthquake or storm damage or something like that, no, the hours is not right, because we haven't factored that into our proposal. Did I answer your question?
Yeah.
Do you have
Thank you.
No further questions? Yeah. Okay, yes, okay. So, Councillor Moko.
Just wondering if this is a cost that we've budgeted for in the future, Dave?
No, we haven't. We've just budgeted the standard based off last year.
Councillor Wilson, did you have another?
Just a quick follow-up. David, just remind me, we don't have a choice of where we get the audit done, or do we?
No.
Well, that makes it simple, doesn't it?
Or difficult, depending on which way you're looking at it.
Oh, well.
Okay. Bruce.
Yeah, thanks, Chair, and thanks, Clarence. I mean, it's a difficult discussion because this absolute increase in fee is elsewhere in other committees eye-watering, and a 48% increase doesn't normally go with most people's budgets.
So I don't tend to want to quibble, Clarence, because I agree with your premise. We want a good audit, and we want you to have, I should put I, because I can't speak for the committee, but I'm assuming they probably would agree. I want you to have reasonable hours to actually do the audit. In terms of open book, it's really difficult for us to know whether this is the right level or not. So, you know, when you say the total hours and it's got to be this, it's difficult for us generally, you know, I'll be blunt, as lay people, I guess I have to wee bit accept myself from that. It's difficult for us to know these are the right hours and that is a reasonable time, particularly when you say you've had it so wrong before, which is what you're essentially hinting at it. And I mean, how you run up $520,000 in WIP is beyond me. I mean, I don't know what the rules were in terms of charging. So when I see things like additional time spent on managing secondees, the nature of resourcing led us to unnecessary review questions. This is on page 214. We had quality improvements done on the work papers. We would never be charged that, no, would we, in any way? So that shouldn't be allowed for. That's an internal problem of actually doing it. Look, we're going to have it, you know, Kieran, I think there will be a sense of feeling about that absolute increase. But can I just ask a couple of questions about the 270 hours? Because I think the thing that really strikes me here is you're adjusting your recovery rate. You're going from $181 and out of $224. You're readjusting your recovery rate. That's the big change in terms of this fee, and that'll be the internal workings of Audit New Zealand and the OAG, which is driving this. And I think the additional 93 hours seems to be essentially a straight-out fee adjustment, which I take your point. But I look at something like, is it ISA 315? 66 hours, that's $15,000 roughly, or a bit more. I think it's 21 you've got when you convert it to dollars. And I wonder why we're paying for that. Don't you have that information already on your file? This is talking about doing, if I've got it correct, extra work. I think it's largely in the IT area. Don't you already know about our IT systems? Why are we paying for that? That's perhaps the end of my first question.
Through you, Madam Chair. Thanks, Bruce. So with the 315, it is not just the normal IT systems that you have in place. So previously we looked at your financial systems. Now we have to assess all your systems to see where there's significant reliance on IT. So we have to go through all your systems and see what controls is in place. It is driven by accounting and auditing standards. You would think that, yes, we can roll it from one year to the next, but it's not as simple as that because there's new requirements and there's a strive for quality improvements, not only in Audit New Zealand, but it's in the profession as a whole. Like all the firms, we are under the scrutiny of the FMA reviews, NZK reviews, all of that. And whenever they do reviews on our files and they come up with recommendations, we have to implement it, which means normally more time spent on the audit. And you were right on the things that you said you shouldn't be paying for that, and that's not factored into any of our fees or hours that we are proposing. The fees are based on an experienced team getting the right information without any hiccups.
Even if you don't already have that information on, you know, the IT controls and what have you, you know, I can understand if it's a new standard, then there's a certain amount of work that you'll need to do to acquaint yourself with those controls this year. But surely you won't have to redo all of that work again next year and the year after. But effectively, that's what you've factored into this fee.
It's the same as, thank you, Madam Chair, it's the same as with revaluations. Yes, you in principle have what you did last year. It's not to say it's the same this year. You have to go through the process again. Maybe it won't be all the full hours, But how do you
Can't be from
justify?
scratch every year, surely.
No, not from scratch, but you still have to make sure that you go through the process of reassessing all the systems, looking at that. Yes, I agree, it should be quicker the second and third year, except if there's new new systems being implemented.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, so there hasn't been any downward adjustment in year 24 and 25 for that point. And Bruce, if you don't have any further questions, I've got a lead-on question.
Look, I
on that
suspect
page.
I know where you're going, so I think I'll leave. I'll have
Okay,
my
and then
say.
and then
You'll
I can
probably
have
lead
that
into where
too.
I would probably go next.
Yeah. So I'm just looking on page 215 where you're outlining what the extra, so the reasons for the change in the audit hours. And so the first item is 20 extra hours for the service performance reporting. I'd understood that is, there'll be minimal changes coming out of that standard, and just wondering why it would take 20 more hours, half a week's work on that item.
I think we can go through all the different hours specifically. This is an estimate of where we think we're going to spend the hours. We're trying to get the baseline right. What we said there is we don't expect any hours, although there's a new checklist that we have to work through. Then if there's anything that we pick up out of that, then we have to make sure that the disclosures are worked through. This is not definite, and that's why normally when we have the fee discussions, we normally come to agreement where we say we can have an open book exercise at the end of the first audit. We can actually analyse the hours spent, see where there was inefficiencies, where we've went overboard, if that's the case, and have the discussion with management. I think it's very difficult to exactly say, to do a revaluation this year is going to take me 60 hours or 600 hours. It depends on, first of all, what comes back from the valuers, how much work did management do, how accurate is the reconciliations, does it reconcile with this, does it reconcile with that, are we happy? I mean, I can go on, and
Okay.
it's very difficult.
I get the general gist, right. Okay, I'm just watching the clock, so we're going to need to keep the answers a wee bit more concise. But just to finish off on this page, so there is an extra 48 hours for revaluation, fair value assessments, but I understood that there were fewer material revaluations this year. And the other item that stuck out to me was the impacts of growth. And that impact of growth was factored into last year's hours, and let's not forget that we already had a 36% increase from 2021. So this 50% increase was on the back of significant increases in previous years. So what I'm getting to in this line of questioning is, I wonder whether these, additional hours just need a little more work, because some of those don't make sense. And if I bring it back to one final sanity check, you say that in 2022 you spent just about 5,600 hours. So that's the equivalent to 65 weeks of full-time work. To me, that just doesn't seem to add up. How we could spend over a year's worth of work on this audit. Obviously, there's more than one person working on it, but it just doesn't seem to make sense to me, that number of hours.
Sorry, Madam Chair, but I think you looked at the dollar value. The hours is 2,500, which is still excessive.
2,595, so almost 2,600.
Yeah. So, and again, it's the whole team of director, EQR, manager in charge, and the team. So it's pretty easy to rack up the hours, and we acknowledge the inefficiencies that we had. So that's not factored into, well, you can't pass that on. And as I said when I started, we've never come back to council to sort of recover any of the fees, which will be unreasonable. We haven't even tried that because it will be unreasonable. And it's not included in the thing. The hours that we included, I mean, you look at in a normal year, you can say that your revaluations will be this, this, and this, and then you can include the actual hours every third year for that. When you do get then a year where there's an extra revaluation needed, then we will have to charge extra for that, which adds to admin, and it just becomes really difficult to manage exactly where it is. As I said, this is an estimate of the hours required to do a quality audit,
Yep.
and I'm prepared to have an open book.
Okay,
there.
thank you. Councillor Moko.
Your commentary, Madam Chair. Is there an opportunity for elected members, staff to potentially interrogate this outside of this forum?
Yes, so let's move to, what are our options from here? Obviously, I'm feeling that all of the committee are feeling uncomfortable with this level of fee increase. Let's not forget, this is paid through ratepayers' dollars, and we do have a responsibility to look at the reasonableness, the probity and the waste issues, not to mention where we're going to find it in the budget. I guess this question is for you, Clarence. What if we don't accept this fee proposal? What is the next step?
So in the letter that I sent out, there's we are encouraged to reach agreement. If we can't reach agreement, it will go back to the OAG, and that's the last thing that we want to do. So I think we need to try and reach an agreement, which is fair and equitable for both sides. It's not to say that I'm going to be happy or you're going to be happy, but it must be fair and equitable.
And I agree, it's got to be sustainable for Audit New Zealand, but it also needs to be sustainable for council. So I note in the letter that there is an indication of some flexibility around phasing in the significant change. So I guess as a committee we need to decide whether or not we're comfortable to move forward. Well, I guess we've got the options to recommend this fee proposal to council unchanged, or go back and take it offline to negotiate either a phasing in of this fee proposal, or, and my personal preference would be to ask Audit New Zealand to re-look at those estimates of increased hours, and based on the committee's feedback, to see if we can reach a more reasonable fee increase phased in over the 3-year period. Can I get...
Just procedurally, are you intending to move the original appointment type letter separately to the fee?
Can I just check with Clarence? So what happens, because if the implication is if we sign the engagement letter, then we're effectively locking ourselves into this proposed fee, although presumably the fee needs to be negotiated separately. What happens if we don't sign the engagement letter?
So if you don't sign the engagement letter, I suppose then we have to go to the OAG to make sure that he still wants myself and Audit New Zealand to be the appointed auditor. You can go to the OAG and ask for a different service provider. It's not to say that the fees will come down.
But it would give us, Madam Chair, obviously an opportunity to go out for expressions of interest.
No, not as I understand it. We're not able to appoint our own auditor. It's the decision of the Auditor General.
All right.
If I may answer that, Madam Chair. So the Auditor General is the appointed auditor of all public sector entities. So, and then he appoints the service provider, which may be Audit New Zealand or one of the other big four. And then Audit New Zealand, in my instance, appointed me as the appointed auditor for Hamilton City. So it's not a, you can't unfortunately go out and get BDO or somebody to necessarily.
So procedurally, my understanding is that are you suggesting you're going to put the appointment separately to the agreed fee, and we are saying in the appointment, subject to an agreement on the fee,
That's probably a good, yeah, I think the two matters are separate. If we're happy to continue with Audit New Zealand, subject to negotiating a fee.
So Amy would have, yeah, so if
So we would receive the report, receive the attachments, request staff to work with Audit New Zealand to further negotiate the fee based on direction received during the meeting, and recommend to council that they approve the the audit engagement letter.
subject to
Yes, subject to
result of C.
negotiation of a reason. Yeah, subject to C.
Resolution of C.
And the audit proposal letter, so no, it wouldn't be the audit proposal letter would not be, well, actually, yes, subject to C. The audit proposal letter would be signed by Mayor Southgate.
And Amy, D means that it comes to council.
Yes, I was
So we
trying
would
to
then see
get a timeline.
Possibly a new negotiated fee or not.
Or not.
That we would get
And then we can deal with it at council.
Yeah.
If I may something, Madam Chair, if it is subject to the audit fee, then I will have to put my team on hold.
Yep.
As I don't know if I'll be the appointed auditor.
It doesn't affect the
No,
current.
No,
we're
if it-
signing the engagement letter.
It does. 23, 24, 25.
So you and I probably agree with Clarence that we need to today decide to approve the engagement letter. I'm conscious we actually already have an audit underway. We've already had an interim audit. We actually have a level of contractual liability already. So the engagement letter sets out the respective responsibilities. It's a standard letter. It's a very important letter when you read through as I have the tables at the back. I would agree with Clarence if we're not prepared to sign that with the Auditor General, it's pretty fundamental. And I would think that would be a challenge. So I'd like to suggest that we do need to adopt a recommendation that Paul assigns the engagement letter. I think equally we've also agreed the audit plan, isn't it? Yes, which is the first letter we discussed. I think we have to leave it open that we're actually...
I think the audit plan doesn't need to be
Well, it probably doesn't,
approved.
sorry, it doesn't
Yeah.
need to be signed, but it does then mean that we are still in a contractual issue or a fee issue with Clarence, which I think we're agreeing we need to take offline, have a level of negotiation and discussion, and as Angela's pointed out, bring it back to full council, because it does have significant budget implications, I suspect, whatever way this ends up.
So Madam Chair, a procedural question of Bruce. Are you saying that in fact the quantum involved in the fee is not in fact attached to the appointment letter?
It would be best, you and my view, to have everything tidy.
Clearly, we're not going to resolve that.
We're not going to. I don't know whether this is comfort, but the majority of my engagements, I have assigned engagement letter, assigned approach to the year, but I have no certainty over the fee because I'm yet to receive the proposal letter. And I have in all cases noted I'm signing up to a contract without knowing the price. Okay? That's the position we're in. The reality of it is Auditor General is always going to be our auditor. We've started an audit with Audit New Zealand. We could change horses. That happened last year. But that was through the request of the Auditor General, not through a client request. I think in reality, I guess I'm arguing we need to reach an agreement with Clarence over the fee. We can't do that now. We need to take that offline, have a hard-nosed negotiation, but we do want the audit. We do want an opinion by 31 October, and I'm arguing practically we've got to go for it.
Yeah, I think we're all in agreement that we want the this year's audit that has already started to proceed with the current auditor. So in order to continue on with that in a streamlined manner, I think we're going to need to put the recommendation through to council for Mayor Paula to sign the engagement letter, not subject to the fee negotiation, but separate the fee negotiation to be negotiated by staff. So you've got so we received the report, we received the following attachments: request staff work with Audit New Zealand to negotiate the fee, and recommends that we approve the audit engagement letter to be signed by the Mayor, approves the audit proposal letter to be signed by the Mayor, subject to C.
Subject to C.
Yes. Are we all comfortable with that?
I'll wait for the debate. I mean, I understand what the motion is.
Yes.
I'm happy, of process, I'm happy to move that, Karen.
Yep. And can I have a seconder for that?
I'm happy to second.
Thank you. Councillor Ewan, would you like to?
I'll let the mover go first.
Yes, look, I think I've had my fair say, and I'm happy that we proceed to the debate without, I've got a right of reply at the end if it really comes to it, so that's fine, thank you.
Yeah, look, I understand the predicament we've now found ourselves in. I think it's peculiar that we have found ourselves in this position. I accept it is not unusual. What I find is unusual is that we haven't sorted it out before now. That in fact we should make it very clear that we don't commence an audit process until we've landed on a fee. You wouldn't usually do that in a commercial environment, and if you do, then you'll be hung by your own petard when you get the bill. And I don't think our ratepayer would expect us to commit to a contract, and I'm not using your words verbatim, but pretty much, that we really don't know what we're going to end up paying. And this is what we're being asked to do today. So I will agree only on the basis that Part C does say that the Mayor will sign it subject to us resolving the fee. Because and that's my understanding, because I will be absolutely astonished if the Mayor would dare to sign it until it's gone through all of council, and I can't imagine all of my elected members thinking that it was a good idea to commit this council to a particular course of action without knowing what it's going to cost, because we've had an indication that it's doubled already. So I'm looking forward to some negotiation. I guess my message to staff is I do not want to be in this position next year. And we'd be saying to Audit New Zealand, let's get ourselves sorted way in advance so that we get the quantum issue resolved before we start the audit.
Okay, thank you. Any other committee members wishing to speak on that? No?
So if I could just have a reply as you move to do it, you and I think we actually are agreeing. And I think I could reflect that I have asked, in fact, I can say at a personal level, not necessarily just on Hamilton's case, but my other engagements, I have met with Audit New Zealand saying, why have I not got a fee? And I would put the time at least as early as March this year. Because indeed, we should be adopting all these three documents in one hit, which also presupposes that we would have negotiated the fee so that it doesn't play out, I shouldn't say in public, but, you know, in the way that it's playing out with us today. I think personally, and I say this carefully of my old beloved institution, the Auditor General has a point to answer to, because Clarence has only got clearance on this fee, a couple of days ago. So we've only had the letter for 2 days. And I'm absolutely agreeing with you. That's I understand all the reasons and understand it, but from a client service reception perspective, i.e. our perspective, that is sadly lacking. But I'm also, I guess, of the position, which is the reason that I've moved this motion, I've got to be pragmatic to get this thing going. So hence I will, again, reassert that I'll move the motion. And I'd like you to vote with me if you can, Ewan.
Okay. Look, if we're ready, I will put that to the vote. All of those in favour of the motion? Motion A, B, C and D. Are we happy to put them all together? All of those in favour, say aye. Aye. Against? Carried. Thank you. Okay. Right. As I'd indicated in the areas of focus for the meeting, thank you, Clarence and Stephen. You know, that was an area that I did want to spend, to leave plenty of time for, because it, you know, is a significant issue for council, not only this year, but in future years. That is a significant fee, and it's worthwhile the extra scrutiny on it. Right, I think we have now covered all of our agenda items, which brings me to the resolution to exclude public on page 171. I'll move the resolution on second. Thank you. All of those in favour? Against? Passed. Thank you. Right, we'll have just a 5-minute